April 17, 1906. San Francisco is a city intoxicated with its own success. In just a few decades, it has transformed from the muddy, chaotic boomtown of the gold rush into the undisputed Paris of the West. It's the 9th largest city in America, a global hub of finance, culture, and trade. Grand Victorian mansions cling to its famous hills, electric streetcars hum along its avenues, and its port bustles with ships from every corner of the globe. The city is a symbol of American ambition, a jewel glittering on the edge of the continent. As the gas lamps are lit on that Tuesday evening, the great opera singer Enrico Caruso is in town, preparing to perform Carmen. The city's elite are dining in opulent restaurants, while its notorious Barbary Coast district thrums with sailors and gamblers. As the city finally drifts off to sleep, it is dreaming of an even grander future. But it is a city built upon a terrible and violent secret, a secret that is about to be revealed. At 5:12 the next morning, the secret is unleashed. A deep guttural roar erupts from the earth, a sound that one survivor would later say was the groan of a world in its death agony. For 42 seconds, San Francisco is seized and violently shaken by a power it cannot comprehend. Brick buildings of 7 stories collapse into piles of dust. The magnificent dome of City Hall, a monument of civic pride that took 27 years to build, sheds its stone skin, leaving behind a terrifying steel skeleton. The very ground liquefies, and the city that thought itself a permanent jewel is broken in less than a minute. But the shaking was only the prelude. The true apocalypse was yet to come. The story of 1906 is not just the story of a great earthquake. It is the story of a man-made inferno that rose from the rubble, a catastrophe of human error and hubris that would burn for 3 days and consume a city's soul. The city's fate was written in the very land upon which it was built. San Francisco sits directly astride the San Andreas Fault, the colossal seam where 2 of Earth's tectonic plates, the Pacific Plate and the North American Plate, grind against each other. For decades, the plates had been locked, stuck by friction, while the rest of the planet continued to move. This process stored up a mind-boggling amount of tectonic strain, an invisible geological debt that had to be paid. While the fault was the source of the power, the city's own design made it uniquely vulnerable to what was coming next. It was a metropolis made of wood. Hundreds of thousands of its citizens lived in magnificent multi-story Victorian houses built with a cheap and fast construction method called balloon framing. These beautiful homes were, in effect, perfectly stacked piles of kindling, and this city of wood was illuminated and heated by a vast, city-wide network of gas lines. It was a modern wonder with a fatal medieval flaw. It was a tinderbox, waiting for a single, catastrophic spark. At 5:12 a.m. on April 18th, that spark arrived. A rupture on the San Andreas Fault, just 2 miles off the coast, sent a seismic shockwave tearing through the region. The ground along the fault line itself lurched, moving as much as 21 feet in an instant. The earthquake, now estimated to have been a magnitude 7.9, unleashed the energy equivalent of thousands of atomic bombs. Its shock was felt from southern Oregon to Los Angeles. In San Francisco, it was the end of the world. In that first terrifying minute, the infrastructure of a modern city was dismantled. As survivors crawled from the wreckage, believing the worst was over, dozens of small fires began to ignite all across the ruined city. A woman making breakfast in a damaged chimney flue started what would become the infamous ham and eggs fire, a blaze that would eventually consume the city's heart. Ruptured gas mains hissed fire from the buckled streets. Downed electrical lines ignited heaps of wooden debris. The city's fire department, renowned as one of the nation's best, responded with courage and speed. But they arrived to find a second, and even more devastating, disaster. The same earthquake that had started the fires had also shattered the city's brittle iron water mains. The vast underground network of pipes was broken in hundreds of places. When the firemen connected their hoses to the hydrants, they were met with a pathetic trickle, or nothing at all. They were an army without ammunition, forced to stand by and watch in horror as dozens of small controllable fires began to merge into an unstoppable, all-consuming firestorm. What followed was 3 days of hell. The fire, fanned by the wind, began to march relentlessly across the city. Without water, the city's leaders, including the US Army's General Frederick Funston, made a desperate and ultimately catastrophic decision. They would try to create fire breaks by dynamiting buildings in the fire's path. It was a sound theory that turned into a horrific practice. The firefighters and soldiers tasked with the job were not demolition experts. They consistently used too much black powder or dynamite, which didn't just level the buildings, it shattered them, launching flaming embers and debris high into the air over the fire breaks, where they started new fires on the other side. Block after block, the solution became an accelerant. They were fighting the fire with fire, and the fire was winning, often fueled by their own mistakes. As the city burned, the social fabric began to tear. Faced with rampant looting, the city's controversial mayor, Eugene Schmitz, a former orchestra leader who had risen to power on a wave of populist corruption, made an infamous and brutal decision. He issued an official proclamation, posted all over the ruined city. The federal troops, the members of the regular police force, and all special police officers have been authorized by me to kill any and all persons found engaged in looting or in the commission of any other crime. For the next few days, an unknown number of people, perhaps as many as 500, were summarily executed in the streets without trial. While some were undoubtedly criminals, many accounts suggest that innocent citizens, desperately trying to salvage what few belongings they had left from their own homes, were shot by trigger-happy soldiers and vigilantes. The disaster had brought out incredible heroism. Telephone operators who stayed at their posts until the flames consumed them, sailors who ran hoses from Navy ships to pump seawater onto the docks. But it had also brought out a dark and brutal side of human nature. By the second day, the fires had merged into a single massive inferno, so hot it created its own weather, a fire tornado that ripped through the city, melting iron and glass. Hundreds of thousands of homeless refugees fled the flames, climbing the city's hills to watch in horror as their world was turned to ash. After 3 days and nights, the fire finally began to burn itself out, stopped only by the wide boulevard of Van Ness Avenue and the waters of the bay. What was left was a smoking, desolate ruin. The final toll was staggering, and for decades, deliberately covered up by city leaders to protect real estate values and project an image of a city that was safe for investment. But the story of San Francisco did not end in the ashes. The city's response was one of the most remarkable acts of rebirth in American history. A spirit of resilience and defiance took hold, famously captured by a banner hung from a surviving business that read, "The damnedest, finest ruins." They immediately began to rebuild with a speed and ambition that stunned the world, rejecting grand redesign plans in a frantic rush to get the city back on its feet. Just 9 years later, in 1915, San Francisco hosted the Panama Pacific International Exposition, a massive world's fair to announce its own spectacular resurrection. The disaster also marked a scientific awakening. It was the first major natural disaster to be thoroughly documented by photography and modern instruments. The detailed study of the ground rupture by geologist Harry Fielding Reid led to his formulation of the elastic rebound theory. For the first time, it explained how faults accumulate and release strain, becoming the absolute foundation of modern seismology. Out of the destruction came a new understanding of the planet itself. Today, San Francisco stands as a glittering global city, a powerful symbol of resilience. But the ghost of 1906 is a permanent resident. The San Andreas Fault is still there. The tension is still building. Seismologists know that it is not a question of if another great earthquake will strike, but when. The 1906 earthquake was not just a historical event, it was a warning from the deep earth. A 120-year-old ghost that still haunts the city today, reminding it that the beautiful, defiant metropolis is built upon a power it can never hope to control. A power that is, for now, just sleeping,